Hello children, Ravi here. Dear children, today we shall discuss how to tell wild animals. The fourth poem in First Flight, the NCERT textbook in English for Class 10. We shall discuss this poem in the following context. First, introduction to the poet. Second, introduction to the poem. Third, reading and understanding the poem. Fourth, literary devices or figures of speech used in the poem. And fifth, rhyme scheme of the poem. First, let's begin with the introduction to the poet. Dear children, the poem How to Tell Wild Animals has been written by Carolyn Wells. Born on 18th June 1862 in Rahway, New Jersey in USA, she is a well-known American author and poet. She is best known for her children's stories, mystery novels, and humorous verse. A great author and poet, she died on 26th March 1942 at the age of 79. After the introduction to the poet, now let's have a brief introduction to the poem as well. Dear children, the poem How to Tell Wild Animals is a typical humorous poem by Carolyn Wells. It suggests some dangerous ways to identify wild animals. The poem describes the features of some wild animals such as Asian lion, Bengal tiger, bear, crocodile, hyena, and chameleon. And thus, the poem introduces them to the reader in a very humorous way. After an introduction to the poem, now let's read and understand the poem line by line, word to word. The poem includes 6 stanzas in all. In the first stanza, the poet describes the Asian lion. She says, if ever you should go by chance to jungles in the east, अगर कभी by chance ईस्ट के जंगल में आप जाते हो, and if there should to you advance a large and tawny beast, और अगर एक ब्राउनिश ऑरेंज कलर का एक बड़ा सा बिस्ट यानी जानवर आपकी ओर आता है, if he roars at you as you are dying, और वो इतनी जोर से गुर्राता है कि आपको लगने लगे कि आप अब मरने वाले हो, you will know it is the Asian lion, तो आपको पता चल जाएगा कि ये एशियन लायन है. So this is how the poet suggests how to identify a lion. In the second stanza, the poet describes the Royal Bengal tiger. She says, or if sometime, और अगर किसी वक्त, when roaming round, जब आप यहाँ वहाँ घूम रहे हो, a noble wild beast, एक ऊंची जाति का जंगली जानवर, with black stripes on a yellow ground, जिसकी येलो बैकग्राउंड यानी येलोइश स्किन पे काले पट्टे हो, ग्रीट्स यू, आपका स्वागत करता है. जस्ट नोटिस, तब आप ध्यान से देखना कि इफ ही ईट्स यू, अगर वो आपको खा जाता है. दिस सिंपल रूल मे हेल्प यू लर्न, ये सिंपल रूल आपको ये सीखने में मदद करेगा. द बंगाल टाइगर टू डिसर्न, कि बंगाल टाइगर कैसे आइडेंटिफाई होता है, पहचाना जाता है. राइट. In the third stanza, the poet describes the leopard. She says, if strolling forth, अगर आप यहाँ वहाँ घूम फिर रहे हो, तब a beast you view, आपको एक जानवर दिखाई पड़ता है, whose hide, जिसकी hide यानी skin is peppered with spots, काले spots से peppered यानी covered है. As soon as he has leapt on you, जैसे ही वो आपकी ओर उछलकर छलांग मारता है, you will know it is the leopard. तब आपको पता चल जाएगा कि ये तो लेपर्ड है. It will do no good to roar with pain. और आपके दर्द से चिल्लाने से कुछ नहीं होगा, क्योंकि he will only lap and lap again. जितना आप चिल्लाते जाओगे उतना ही वो आप पर उछलकर अटैक करता रहेगा. So, this is how the poet suggests how to identify a lapper. बच्चों, इस स्टैंजा में पोएट ने इंग्लिश वर्ब लेफ्ट की जगह जानबूझकर लेफ्ट और लैप का इस्तेमाल किया है ताकि इस स्टैंजा की राइम स्कीम सेट हो सके. कई बार राइटर्स और पोएट्स इस तरह इंग्लिश वर्ड्स की करेक्ट स्पेलिंग्स को अपने हिसाब से चेंज करते रहते हैं, जिसे इंग्लिश में पोएटिक लाइसेंस कहते हैं. राइट? Now, in the fourth stanza, the poet describes another beast, that is a bear. She says, if when you are walking your yard, जब आपके यार्ड में यानी गार्डन में यहाँ वहाँ घूम रहे हो, तब you meet a creature there, वहाँ आप किसी जानवर से मिलते हो, who hugs you very very hard, जो आपको बहुत जोरों से हग करता है, आपसे लिपट जाता है. तो बी श्योर, तो यकीन मानिए, इट इज अ बेर, ये भालू ही है. इफ यू हैव एनी डाउट्स, और फिर भी अगर आपको कोई डाउट हो तो आई गेस, मुझे लगता है, ही विल गिव यू जस्ट वन मोर कैरेस, वो फिर एक बार आपसे प्यार लड़ा सकता है. सो दिस इज हाउ यू कैन आइडेंटिफाई अ बेर. In the fifth stanza, the poet describes two different wild creatures, crocodile and hyena. The poet says, though to distinguish beast of prey यानी hunting animals, शिकारी जानवरों में फर्क करने में अगर a novice, an inexperienced इंसान might nonplus यानी confuse हो सकता है, फिर भी You always may tell the crocodile from the hyena thus. आप क्रोकोडाइल और हाइना के बीच इस प्रकार फर्क कर सकते हो. हाइना comes with merry smiles. हाइना वो आपकी ओर हंसते हुए आएगा. But if they weep, अगर वो रोते हुए आपकी ओर आते हैं तो they are crocodiles. तो वो क्रोकोडाइल्स हैं. बच्चों, आमतौर पर हाइनास जब आवाज करते हैं तो हमें हंसने की आवाज आती है. इसलिए यहां पोएट ने इस फैक्ट का, हकीकत का इस्तेमाल किया है. ऑन द अदर हैंड, क्रोकोडाइल टीयर्स, घड़ियाली आंसू, इज एन इंग्लिश इडियम जिसका अर्थ होता है फेक डिस्प्ले ऑफ सॉरो यानी झूठ मूठ का रोना. राइट? In the sixth stanza, the poet describes a chameleon, गिरगिट. She says the true chameleon is small. सच में chameleon, गिरगिट, छोटा होता है. A lizard sort of thing. एक lizard, छिपकली जैसा होता है. He hasn't any ears at all. उसके कोई कान नहीं होते. And not a single wing. और पंख भी नहीं होते. If there is nothing on the tree, जब पेड़ पर आपको कोई क्रीचर दिख नहीं रहा है तो इट इज द कमेलियन यू सी, तो आप कमेलियन, गिरगिट देख रहे हो. चिल्ड्रन, दिस इज बिकॉज द कमेलियन हैज द एबिलिटी टू चेंज इट्स कलर डिपेंडिंग ऑन द सर्कमस्टांसेस. गिरगिट परिस्थिति अनुसार अपना रंग बदल सकता है और इसी फैक्ट को यहां दिखाया गया है. सो डियर चिल्ड्रन, दिस वॉज द पोएम हाउ टू टेल वाइल्ड एनिमल्स. After reading and understanding the poem, now let's examine the literary devices or figures of speech used in the poem. First, let's see the use of alliteration in the poem. Now, what's alliteration? The repetition of the same consonant sound at the beginning of two or more words is called alliteration. For example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Here, as you can see, the consonant sound P is repeated at the beginning of Peter Piper picked peck pickled peppers. So this is an example of alliteration. Right. Now, let's examine the use of alliteration in the poem. First, let's have a look at this line. Or if some time when roaming round. Here the consonant sound R is repeated at the beginning of roaming and round. In the line, as soon as he has leapt on you, the sound H is repeated at the beginning of he and has. In the line, he will only lap and lap again. The sound L is repeated at the beginning of lap. In the line, if when you are walking round your yard, the sound W at the beginning of when and walking, and Y at the beginning of you, your, and yard are repeated. In the line, who hugs you very, very hard, the sound H at the beginning of who hugs and hard, while W at the beginning of very, very are repeated. In the line, but if they weep, they are crocodiles. The sound the is repeated at the beginning of they and they. After the alliteration, now let's see the use of repetition in the poem. Now what's repetition? When a word or phrase or full sentence is repeated at least twice in a line of poem, it is called repetition. For example, oh, my love's like a red, red rose. Here the word red is repeated. So this is an example of repetition. Right. Now let's examine the use of repetition in the poem. In the line, if he roars at you as you are dying, the word you is repeated. In the line, as soon as he has leapt on you, the word as is repeated. In the line, he will only lap and lap again, the word lap is repeated. In the line, who hugs you very, very hard, the word very is repeated. In the line, but if they weep, they are crocodiles. The word they is repeated. So, these are the examples of repetition in the poem. After repetition, now let's examine the use of synecdoche. Now what's synecdoche? When a small part refers to the whole object or the whole object refers to its small part, then it is called synecdoche. For example, uneasy feels the head that wears the crown. Here the head refers to the whole personality. Secondly, India won the cricket match. Here the whole object, India, refers to its small part, that is, Indian cricket team. Now, let's examine the use of synecdoche in the poem. In the line, he hasn't any ears at all. Here, a small part, ears, refers to the whole chameleon. So, this is an example of synecdoche in the poem. After synecdoche, let's see the use of metaphor. Now, what's metaphor? When there is an implied comparison between the qualities of two persons or objects, it is called metaphor. For example, her words were a knife in his heart. Here, the words are compared to a knife. So, this is an example of metaphor. Now, let's see the use of metaphor in the poem. Have a look at this line. With black stripes on a yellow ground. Here, there is an implied comparison between a yellow ground and the yellow skin of tiger. Again, in the line, the true chameleon is small, a lizard sort of thing. Here, there is an implied comparison between a chameleon and a lizard. So, these are the examples of metaphor in the poem. After metaphor, now let's see the use of anastrophe in the poem. Now, what's anastrophe? When the order of a sentence is changed from its normal order of subject, verb and object for poetic effect, then it is called anastrophe or inversion. For example, on a black clock sparkle the stars. Here the word order is changed from the normal word order, that is, the stars sparkle on a black cloak. So, this is an example of anastrophe. Now let's examine the use of anastrophe in the poem. Dear children, anastrophe is one of the most prominent literary devices used in this poem. First, have a look at this line. And if there should to you advance a large and tawny beast. Here the word order is changed from its normal word order, that is, and if a large and tawny beast should advance to you. Right? Again, let's have a look at this. If strolling forth a beast you view, whose hide with spots is peppered. Here too the word order is changed from its normal word order. That is, if strolling forth you view a beast whose hide is peppered with spots. Even in the line, the crocodile you always may tell from the hyena thus. The order of the words is changed from its normal word order, that is, you may always tell the crocodile from the hyena thus. So children, these are the examples of anastrophe or inversion in the poem. After anastrophe, now let's check the use of litotes in the poem. Now what's litotes? When a negative statement is made in order to emphasize its positive sense, it's called litotes. For example, she is not unkind. Here the negative phrase not unkind emphasizes the positive sense that she is kind. Right? Now let's examine the use of litotes in the poem. First, have a look at this line. It will do no good to roar with pain. Here the negative statement emphasizes the positive sense that it will be useless to roar with pain. Again in the line, he hasn't any ears at all. A negative statement has been made to emphasize the positive sense that the chameleon is without any ears. Similarly, in and not a single wing, a negative statement is made to convey a positive sense that a chameleon is without any wing. Even in the line, if there is nothing on the tree, a negative statement is made to convey a positive sense that the chameleon has the ability to become invisible. Right? So, these are the examples of litotes in the poem. After litotes, let's see the use of metonymy in the poem. Now what's metonymy? When a word or object refers to some specific concept or idea, it is called metonymy. For example, the pen is mightier than the sword. Here the pen refers to an act of writing, while the sword refers to a military aggression. So this is an example of metonymy, right? Now let's examine the use of metonymy in the poem. First, have a look at this line in the poem. If ever you should go by chance to jungles in the east. Here the jungles in the east refer to the Asiatic jungles. Again in the line, and if there should to you advance a large and tawny beast. A large and tawny beast refers to the Asian lion. So, these are the examples of metonymy in the poem. After metonymy, let's examine the use of oxymoron in the poem. Now what's oxymoron? When two opposite words are used in the line of the poem together, it is called oxymoron. For example, true lies. Here, what's true can't be a lie and what's a lie can't be true. So this is an example of oxymoron, right? Now, let's examine the use of oxymoron in the poem. Have a look at this line. A noble wild beast greets you. Here two opposite words, noble and wild, are used together for poetic effect. So, this is an example of oxymoron. So, dear children, these are the literary devices or figures of speech used in the poem. Now, after the literary devices, let's examine the rhyme scheme in the poem. Now, what's rhyme scheme? A rhyme scheme is the pattern of sounds that repeats at the end of a line or stanza of the poem. Now, let's see the rhyme scheme of the poem How to Tell Wild Animals. First, let's underline the last word at the end of each line in the first stanza of the poem. अब हम फर्स्ट लाइन के लास्ट वर्ड चांस के लिए ए लिखेंगे. अब देखते हैं इस स्टैंजा का कौन सा लास्ट वर्ड चांस के साउंड से मैच होता है. तो हम देख सकते हैं कि थर्ड लाइन का लास्ट वर्ड एडवांस इस चांस से मैच हो रहा है, तो इसके लिए भी हम ए ही लिखेंगे. अब हम सेकेंड लाइन के लास्ट वर्ड ईस्ट के लिए बी लिखते हैं. अब ये ईस्ट फोर्थ लाइन के लास्ट वर्ड बिस्ट से मैच होता है, तो इसके लिए भी हम बी लिखेंगे. इसके बाद फिफ्थ लाइन के लास्ट वर्ड डाइन के लिए सी लिखते हैं. अब ये डाइन सिक्स्थ लाइन के लास्ट वर्ड लाइन से मैच होता है, तो इसके लिए भी हम सी लिखेंगे. तो इस प्रकार इस स्टैंजा की राइम स्कीम बनती है ए बी सी सी. यही राइम स्कीम स्टैंजा नंबर 2, 3, 4, 5 और 6 में भी यूज की गई है. सो ए बी सी सी is the rhyme scheme of the poem How to Tell Wild Animals. So dear children, that was your poem How to Tell Wild Animals. So that's all in today's session. See you soon with a new topic and a new hope of learning something new. Till then, wish you all the very best with today's learning. Bye.